Welcome back. The World Bank raised its economic growth forecast for China today to 7.2%. That's growth most countries would be envious of, but still less than the 8% required to maintain full employment in China. The country's Buy China stimulus plan is being credited for part of the boost. Michael Kraft is the president and CEO of Lingo Media and has been doing business in China for 15 years. He joins us now. He's just back from a visit this week. So how worried should Canada and the rest of the world be about this move, this protectionist move by China?
Well, I think the protectionist move is something that is similar to what other governments are implementing, but the reality is China recognizes that it has to be involved in free trade, and that's been the stimulus of its growth. And although for the infrastructure spending, there's no question that a lot of the inputs will come from China, China does recognize and will continue to import and to recognize that free trade is going to be critical to their growth.
Because what would happen to China if its trading partners stopped buying its goods because of a protectionist war?
Right. Well, we're already seeing that today. I mean, we see with the global recession, less and less commodities, less and less exports are being generated out of China, and there's issues with job creation as China is the workshop of the world. So I think China recognizes that it has to keep that trade both ways.
The chief economist at Morgan Stanley says that China's economy isn't big enough to kickstart the rest of the world out of recession. Would you agree?
I would say that China will have certainly a determining factor in kickstarting that growth, but combined with other nations that are also putting in stimulus together with China taking the lead, they are the emerging economy and they will drive that growth.
What about China's domestic economy? How is it faring?
Well, I think China's domestic economy is so varied. It's such a large country where you see such a divergence between centers in Shanghai that are still growing, probably at record rates with the Shanghai Expo, and then you've got areas in Guangdong, which is the workshop of the world, where light goods are manufactured. And you'd see in Shanghai, where I just came back, you'd have a difficult time getting a reservation at your favorite restaurant. But if you were down in Guangdong, you'd see some difficult times with unemployment and layoffs, and you've got two different worlds, and you probably have 3 or 4 different worlds.
How does consumer spending compare with the United States, for instance?
Well, I think on a per capita basis, it's obviously much less, but I think it's the growth rate. It's how that consumer spending is growing. And I think China has taken strides to implement a lot of national holidays and is trying to stimulate that domestic consumption. And they know that in order to make up for the lost export growth, they're going to try and replace that with domestic consumption.
Where does Canada fit in with China? There'd been some friction with Prime Minister Harper not going to the Olympics, etc. Was that a problem?
Well, I think that was an issue. There's been such tremendous engagement in the with prior governments in Canada, and Canada was at the helm. And I think basically we've been asleep at the wheel, and we've lost our position. But I think there's certainly signs that that engagement is being rekindled. And we've got certain recent visits by Lawrence Cannon and Stockwell Day, and now we've got next week a visit coming from China's foreign minister. So I think the engagement is there, and it will continue, and hopefully it will increase. The
New York Times is saying that China has been buying a lot of commodities, stockpiling commodities. Did you notice that on your trip?
Well, it's hard to notice. I mean, this is what goes on behind boardrooms, but certainly it's clear that the government has that mandate and has a long-term vision and has in the past stockpiled commodities and certainly is confident in their growth and will continue to buy commodities and is doing so probably at bargain basement prices.
What about Canadian business? There's some people have said that there's a criticism that Canadian business is complacent when it comes to doing business with China. Would you agree?
Right. Well, I wouldn't say complacent. I would say that we've been spoiled in a sense. We've been very NAFTA focused with our big, huge trading partners south of the border in America. But I think now with some contraction in the U.S., we have to look abroad, and we have to look to China, given, I call it the G2, China, America, and we have to engage, and we have to trade.
What's your own business connection to China? You're with this on this council.
Right. Well, I've been active as a director of the Canada-China Business Council, which is the leading authority in business and political issues with Canada and China, but I also run a company called Lingo Media, which publishes educational textbooks to teach English across the Chinese school system and also offers a free-to-consumer Speak to Me website that uses speech recognition and avatars to teach the Chinese how to speak English.
Okay, so In terms of service industries such as that, rather than in just commodities, is there more future there, do you think?
Well, I think China's changed. China was the workshop of the world, and now it's become the R&D capital of the world. So I think there's more an opportunity for services, more and more today, and I think China is interested in our services.
Okay, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much.